just thought I'd have a conversation with you guys. So, I'm not sure there's a lot more to tell about myself, but I'll try. Well, I obviously Ghanaian, grew up here, and then did my bachelor's in the US in mathematics and economics, and then joined Deloitte Consulting, both in the US and here. Went back for my MBA, worked with McKinsey & Company, which is a management consulting firm, in the US, South Africa, and then decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur. Well, within McKinsey, I was, actually both my times in consulting, I was fortunate enough to have been what they call an entrepreneur, because even at Deloitte, I was one of the first who came here to set up Deloitte Consulting here. So even within Deloitte, it was very entrepreneurial. I always worked in an entrepreneurial environment. Similar story with McKinsey, actually. It was funny, history repeated itself. And I ended up, soon after I joined McKinsey, I went to Johannesburg to be one of the first people to set up the office there. So even though I worked in sort of more big corporate environments, I'd always had a bit of an entrepreneur by design or by chance. And when I left McKinsey, I joined a client, which was a company called WorldSpace, which is now bankrupt. And that's a 2-day story if you have 2 days. But it's a startup that we were in Washington, D.C., and an Ethiopian American walked in and said, "You don't know who I am, but this is my name and I have $1 billion and this is my idea." And so we helped him figure out how to spend $1 billion. And we were bankrupt. So, part of what we were chatting about was there is such a thing as too much money. There is. But it was a fascinating 2 years. I learned a lot about what not to do. And I think my biggest lesson there was that if you put if you put water in the sea, it goes up. Right? If you put water in a solid pan, it stays. And if you put money in a company before it's got the systems and it's got everything, the money goes out. That's what happened in this space. So since then, I've done a number of other things. I was co-founder of a company that actually brought Mr. Price and Nike, a few other retail brands to this country. I co-founded a money transfer business. And then I decided I wanted to learn how to invest. So I joined Standard Bank in Johannesburg as a director in strategic investments. And I thought I learned how to invest till I came to Ghana. So that's a quick background of myself. And I think the topic I'm supposed to speak on is what would pitch or whatever. But I want to take a step back and maybe talk a bit before you get to the pitch. Because the pitch is important. But I think the concept of looking for capital and finding capital, it's much broader than the pitch. And in my experience, I see a lot of people come sometimes too focused on the pitch and missing what this whole thing is about. So to do that, maybe I'll tell you a story, a couple stories. One story and one experience. And the story is when I was at Standard Bank, and we found, and we were investing globally. My unit was investing globally. So we found an interesting business in New York, run by an American Indian. And they were very excited about the possibility of us investing. They were looking for $50 million. We had a couple of phone calls, and they were traveling to come and see me in Johannesburg. So, when they sent me the information, one of the first things I noticed, which is not necessarily a bad thing, is their business wasn't profitable. Right? And a few other things, but it had potentially, a good future. So just before they came, they called me and they said, we've never been to Johannesburg. Can you recommend a hotel to stay? As those of you who've been in Johannesburg, in Sancton, very decent hotels, the kind of hotels I stay when I travel. There's an Intercontinental, there's a Hilton. So I said, here is your pick of 4. So they came and they called me, and I decided, sometimes where our office was downtown, which, if you don't know, can be a bit tricky in southern Johannesburg. So I offered to pick them up. So I said, which hotel are you staying at? They said, we're staying at the Saxon. Now, the Saxon in South Africa is, at that time, it's like a $700 a night hotel, right? I don't even go there for a drink. Right?
Not even happy hour.
No, because it's the kind of place, it's the kind of place where
Boutique
when you enter, boutique hotel, 36 rooms, when you enter, you park your car, and a BMW drives you up to the door. Right? That's the Saxon. That's what they chose to say, right? So I picked them up, we went to the office, they had a brilliant pitch, but I didn't invest because I frankly couldn't get out of my mind the fact that these guys were asking for $50 million and staying at the Saxon. And they were running a business that at that time wasn't profitable. Now I have no problem, right? If you've made your money from a previous venture and your current venture still don't make money, but you still have money to spend, that's fine. But the point, I think for me, the point to drive home is that when you are an entrepreneur and you are looking for money, right, be sensitive to what messages you send out, right? It's not just in the 1 hour pitch and here's, it's, when people look to invest, they look to understand who you are. They look to understand how you make choices in life. They look to understand what drives you, right? You can't, in my opinion, you can't separate an investment decision, or at least I don't, others may. But if I am putting money in your company for 10 years, 15 years, whatever, I have to understand what pressures you deal with and how you respond to those pressures. A private equity investor is not a bank, right? A bank can isolate that and say, all I need to know is, I need to confirm you can pay me. Now, what happens behind, I don't know. You take my money in 6 months, you pay me, I'm gone. A private equity investor, I have to think much, much broadly than that. Right? It's to put a very crude analogy, right? It's like the difference between a girlfriend and a wife. Right? Most people who are dating and don't have any intention of it, they think, what am I getting today? Right? Companionship, blah, blah, blah. But I have no intention of. When you're getting married, it's who is your mother, who is your sister, who is your dog, because all those things affect me. Right? And that's how, when a private equity investor is investing, that's how they think. Right? Because all those things affect me. Right? So I think, as I said, it's beyond the pitch. It's about telling the whole story about who you are and decisions and choices you make. And sometimes it comes through in the pitch, sometimes it comes through in other ways. But trust me, every good private equity investor picks up every signal. And consciously or subconsciously, it weighs in their decision making. The other I guess experience that I want to share with you, and it's an experience that I keep experiencing along a similar theme, is that I often have people who come, say we're seeking an equity investment. And they understand that it's for long term, they want you as a long term partner, you're going to add XYZ to the business. taking 3 years, 4 years, sometimes longer to build the business, the idea. And then they expect you to make a decision in 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks may be an exaggeration, but you get my point. Now for me, that tells me a number of things, right? It tells me that either the business you are trying to get an investment is actually not as great as you think it is. Because if you expect me to figure out in 2 weeks what you figured out, it's taking you 4 years to figure out, there's a disconnect, right? It tells me that maybe we are not at the same level in understanding what kind of relationship we're getting into. And again, back to this marriage. And it really is a marriage, right? It really is a marriage. You know, when you are getting into a marriage, you go into courtship, you have dinner, you hang out. You're trying to get a sense of who this person is. Will we fit long term, not just today? You know, and even after you're married, you know, the very important thing is you are not your own boss anymore. Right? People forget that. When you're married, you can't just go and hang out and come back at 2 without telling anybody. No. Your spouse has to know. In the same way, when a private equity investor invests, you know, the terms they put in the contracts, you know, will insist, especially if they go invest above a certain threshold in your company. You can't change your company's name without telling me. You can't start another business without telling me. You can't dispose of assets without telling me. You may be the CEO, but the reality is there are certain things you need to consult, right? And people don't think through that, or don't. And when a private equity investor is investing, they are trying to anticipate what kinds of challenges may be coming down the line. And if they get the sense that once I write my check, it's going to be a fight, right? You know, it's not a good sign. So those are just 2 quick scenarios, real scenarios. I raised just to say that seeking an investment is about more than the pitch. And what does that mean? It means, you know, it's about planning, right? If you are planning, then you have to think that the process of your seeking investment, if your company works well, you've got all your information, you've got records and everything, could be up to 6 months, right? But every private equity investor has different internal procedures. They take it to this committee, it gets reviewed, ask those questions, then it goes for legal due diligence, it goes for operational due diligence. Everybody tries to cut that time down, but those are the processes you go through, right? And you have to prepare for that. People wait till they need the money in 2 weeks, and they come and after half an hour pitch, okay, so the factory is ready to go, right? Sometimes you can't avoid it, but the reality is that most of us don't invest with our own money. So besides the fact that we need to find time to get to know the business and people, we have to go through certain processes, some of which are beyond our control. So, big picture, it's about more than the pitch. It's about what signals you send out. It's about how you think about this as a long-term marriage, really. And it's about planning so that your timing, your need for cash in the short term doesn't make you sound and get desperate and ruin the possibility of getting a very good business. And there's lots more we could talk about, but so let me get to the pitch itself. And maybe I'll say 1 or 2 things about the pitch itself. The first is that you have to remember to pitch a business. It sounds simple, but a lot of people pitch a product, one idea. Even when you're starting up and there's no business, right? What people want to invest it's something that they can see a business out of. So you have to pitch a business and not an idea. And what does that mean? It means a number of things. One is that it means that you know, there can be people who are very good at generating ideas and birthing ideas, but not necessarily good at growing them from baby to adulthood. So, as an investor, regardless of what level, whether it's seed investing, early stage, or whatever, we look at the whole package and we try to understand how this idea or this business at this stage can go from where it is to a big business, right? And as most people stop here, right? Because they get very caught in the idea, and they forget that the guy who's putting the money is thinking about here and how they get their money back, right? And it sounds very simple, but it happens a lot of times. The more work you can do to articulate for the person looking to invest what the company would look like, the easier it is. Okay, so you have to demonstrate that you can take it through. You know how it can get through. What does that mean? It means that we look for your understanding of how, back to the systems, procedures. You may not have them today. It may just be a product, an idea for a product. But you have to be able to see that idea has become a company with 500 people, and this is how these are the kinds of systems, this is how you recruit people, because we will ask, right? We will ask. So you have to think through that. You have to think through the execution.
I have a question. Can we ask questions while we go through a blue plate?
I'll just wrap up and then we'll open up. You have to think through the execution. And also, you have to, what I like to say, you have to follow the money in and follow it out, right? Most people are very keen on following the money in, right? I want your money, this is what I'm going to do with it. And then when you ask them, okay, so, what happens? Oh, the company will be big. Yeah, but how do I get my money out? Right? You have to follow the money out, right? And the money out in two ways. The money out in terms of how that idea, product, platform translates into a machine that churns money every day, right? And how, when that thing churns money, me, shareholder XYZ, right, can get money out of the company at some point, whether you are listing it or whether you are paying dividends or whatever. But a lot of people stop at, this is a great product, I know some people will buy, and I know it will make profit. Right. That in itself is not a business. Right. So, those are a couple of things on the pitch. And then the third thing, which is related to the first few I mentioned, is the people behind the business, the idea. I would rather invest in people who I know can execute a bad idea than invest in a good idea that doesn't have people like that can execute, right? Because often, depending on the industry, particularly in IT, right? My very simple way of looking at IT, I've reached a place where I've accepted that I can't keep up with IT and how fast it changes. So when I think about investing in IT, I have to understand that I'm not investing in that product that person is bringing at that time. I'm investing in their ability to read the trends and change with the way IT is changing, right? that product just opens the door, right? But I know in 2-3 years that product will be out the window. Is this a team of people that will see that coming and will change the product or will add on products to suit the times? Right? Very different from another business, a gold mining business, or which gold is gold. You may change a few pieces of equipment, but it's there. In IT is a different story. Telecom is a different story. So the point is, the people behind the business are sometimes even more important than the idea, and even more so in fast-changing industries, technology-led fast-changing industries. Because when you come to people like me, understandably there are some IT-focused investors who are very good themselves at reading the trends, and they back themselves that, if I invest in so and so, I can help them. I don't, right? As a generalist investor, I don't back myself to understand how IT is going to change or how telecom is going to change. So when I invest in a business, what I'm really investing in is the ability of the people behind the product that is in the business at that moment to find new products, to keep creating hits, right? It's like investing in a musician, right? They have a hit one day, right? They have a hit one day, fine, and you're investing in them because they had a good hit. But that hit only lasts for a second, and then you gotta have another hit, Are they capable of having more and more? So I will leave it at that. And questions, thoughts on anything I've said or any other thing, I'll be happy to entertain a discussion. You had a question.
Yeah, this one it's hog. But going back to what you're saying about people, it's interesting because part of what we do is really, for us, very early stage is to invest. We talked about investing. We would rather invest in the people, very good people who can execute, than a brilliant idea. What if you find an idea that's, we see it all the time, especially some of these young guys, brilliant ideas, but you look at the guy and you know for a fact that this guy cannot succeed based on lack of experience, maybe been in a corporate setting before, and so you can't take this thing anywhere, or based on the fact that most entrepreneurs are very disciplined, and this not in a bad way though, but when it comes to structures. Are you saying you walk away from that deal? What can you do to ensure that that deal does not die?
A couple of things. One is that I may consider investing in someone like that knowing they are going to fail.
Knowing they
are going to fail.
Okay.
Now, if there are someone who, Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs is a perfect example, right? If there are someone who I believe, back to this musician thing, can keep coming up with hits, they're just a bad manager, right? Because of immaturity or whatever. If I can price my investment properly, I'll invest in them to mature, knowing that they can keep coming up with hits, right? Hit 1 may be a train smash, hit 2 may be a train smash. By hit 3, they would have learned a few things themselves. Now, if it doesn't, it will always cost you something. But if the cost is not too astronomical, right, it's a chance I would take, right? So that's one. That's me in person. This is not standard investing world. This is the way I would look at it. Right? That's one. The other is, when an investor comes to you, this is actually one of the points I wanted to make, which I forgot, is you need to look to see what else you can get from an investor beyond capital. And so, if an entrepreneur is coming to you and they accept that you can offer them more than capital, right? What I try and do, or what I would try and do in that situation, is presumably one of the reasons why they'll be coming to me for my capital is because I can give them some advice, I can point them in the right direction, I can add stuff they don't have. And at that point, I would tell them, look, here is where I think you may be weak, right? Should we work on finding someone in your team that can help strengthen that part of what you don't have, right? Some may say no, some say it depends on the relationship they have with you and who they are and that kind of stuff. But that's also a viable option. In that way, you are actually adding value. Presumably they will come to a place like ServLed because you can help them think about their business and I think a suggestion that, you know what, here are some weaknesses, here are fantastic strengths, here are some weaknesses. Do you mind if we help you look for somebody who can work with you in some capacity to bridge that? So for me, one of those two. One of those two. Third possibility may be to work with them to get the idea, to birth the idea, and see if you can plug it in to a bigger play.
So buy it out. Buy the idea from them. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily buy the idea. I mean, I had a situation where actually fairly similar situation, and the structure which we had agreed on was we were looking at a business in cocoa processing, doing a few things, bigger business. And someone came to us with an idea, also in cocoa, but they had a concept of retailing chocolate, some chocolate drinks and other things. Great idea, but we didn't think they could see it through. So the arrangement we came to was we'd work with them to get it off the ground. We would invest in cocoa company and we'll make this, a product department. So they would go run this product department, but under a bigger umbrella. And in principle, we agreed, but we ended up never doing the bigger deal for various reasons. So that's an example. So that's sort of the way I think about it. I don't know if that helps you.
Except of course in IT. It's only in IT you won't do this.
Yeah. IT is for me, it's a tricky, because of my own limitations, not because of any inherent challenges in it. But IT is a tricky one for me.
I was going to ask that in your practice, are there more deals that you have walked away from than deals that you have actually closed?
Every private equity business, but in private equity, the cliche you're saying is that some of our best decisions never see the light of day. Sometimes, not sometimes, often the best decisions are the decision to walk away. Warren Buffett has this saying, he says, the one key difference between successful and super successful people. Super successful people say no more often, right? And in our business, it's a challenge, but it's something you have to do. Every now and then you make a wrong call. But yes, we walk away from much more than we end up doing for various reasons. Sometimes we don't like the concept. Sometimes we carry it all the way through. At the last minute, something falls. something negative comes up in due diligence, various reasons. But that's the way it works. If you're doing more deals than you're saying no to, there's a train smash coming.
Yeah. And is it even more in Africa, where, it's often said that most of the businesses are not investable or they are not independent?
It's difficult to say. I don't know what the statistics say, but I would venture to say probably not. Simply because in the more advanced private equity markets, I think because private equity is a much more understood asset class and they see a lot more deals. So just by sheer law of large numbers, I'm sure there's a lot they say no to. Whereas in Africa, yes, we may say no to more because for one reason or another they are not the right deals, but we don't have as many private equity deals to look at. So.
Yeah, when you started, you said that the consideration you usually make in investing is that you have to, most times when people come to start to pitch, they are more interested in the product than the business. Can you throw more light on that angle?
Yeah, but if you watch, do you watch Dragon's Den?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure you've seen several examples where someone comes and they do their pitch and it's a nice product and it can make cappuccino for you and it can do this. And one of the first questions they ask is, okay, so tell me about your cost base. Okay, what percentage do you spend on salaries? Oh, I never thought of that. Now, if you're running a business and you're prepared to run a business, you better know those numbers are pretty basic. So that's an example of people going, because understandably they spend so much time developing the product and testing that they haven't thought of themselves as sitting in a chair one day and looking through the numbers and saying that business is working, we have to cut this, we have to increase this. But the guy sitting there, that's what they are interested in, right? Yeah, then once they confirm that this sounds interesting, the next, the first question they ask is, okay, so tell me about, what does your income statement look like, right? Right? And you'll be surprised by the number of people who can't make the transition from a product to the income statement. And that's what I mean, right? The income statement, forget about the product, right? Whether it's a nice dog or a nice shoe or whatever. What does your income statement look like? How's your revenue line? What's your revenue line looking like? What is your biggest cost item? What does this look like? What are your challenges here? That's the business. That's when you run a business, that's what you deal with. Sometimes you go for months without seeing the product, right? You are dealing with this. That's what I mean by the business. And a lot of people, because they spend so much time developing the product, forget that at some point the product will be working well in the factory or whatever. You may be thousands of miles away from the factory and you are dealing with the business. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I'd like to know, what do you think is the best way to pitch a business which is in a gray area, like the business you are trying to go into an unexplored industry? What's the best way to pitch?
When you say gray area, tell me about gray area. What industry?
Say affordable homes.
Okay.
It's not really catch on in Ghana. So you want to pitch such a business. What do you think is the best way to pitch it?
Because it's a gray area. First, I'm not sure affordable homes is a gray area, but because your definition is a gray area, you want to. I think your first point of call is you want to make it as black and white as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Right? so that's your first challenge. So if it's not a gray area, and everybody understands at the high level what a bank is. You're going to start another bank. All right, tell me how unique you're going to be compared to my bank, blah, blah, blah. Show me your income statement. That's one thing. But if it's a gray area, you have to make it black and white so people can see what the business is. So you have to, I think your real challenge in a pitch like that is to demonstrate the need for the business and where it fits into what you may consider a black and white area. So in real estate, right, what is a black and white area? Expensive homes is a black and white area, right? So the way I start thinking about it is affordable house, and if it indeed is gray, right? I may even anchor it to you. You understand high net worth homes, $250,000, blah, 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 blah. Now, that goes for only 5% of the population. There's 95% of the population who have nowhere else to live. They make this much money, they do this, they need homes, right? Affordable homes. Something like that, make the area as black and white as possible first, right? If you can do that, then your next step is, okay, let me show you how it works as a business, the product. Here's how the product is unique within that space I've defined, and here's why I don't make money. Right? But if it's a gray area, you want to make it as black and white as possible very quickly. Because when you get here and it's still gray, you are lost.
As a follow-up to the question I asked earlier, you notice using the Dragon's Den example, that most entrepreneurs, once they go there, one of the questions they ask you, how is your business worth? Like following the business. There's one thing that I've seen on Dragon's Den, that people are either overvalued it or undervalued it. And also noticing on Dragon's Den, if you overvalue it, they think you are too optimistic and probably, and if you undervalue it, they think you are not serious. So, as up and coming entrepreneurs, we'll get into that space. What's the best way of valuing the business?
Very good question, because I'm not sure I know the answer. First of all, valuation, contrary to what may seem, valuation is more of an art than a science. There are equations and there are formulas and whatever, but deciding which formula to use. Once you decide which formula to use, you put in an answer, it spits out the number. But deciding which formula to use is an art. So the big decision, which is deciding which formula to use, it's actually more of an art than a science. Having said that, and even forgetting about valuation for a second, the thing about the pitch is you want to be ambitious, right? But you also want to be realistic. Right? Now, in trying to find that balance, not everybody will agree. You shouldn't, point number one is you shouldn't feel anyway if you go and sit in front of an investor and you disagree on valuation. But it's not the end of the world. Now, if you are 10,000 miles apart, it may be the end of the world. But starting the conversation with a disagreement on valuation, it's not the end of the world. It's actually the beginning of a conversation. Right? So it's important you understand that, because a lot of people, when they come and they say, well, my business is, 2 million, and we say, no, it's 1.5 million. They do, no, so are we finished? No, right? Because, as I said, it's an art, right? That start gives both sides an opportunity, right? To say, this is why I think it's worth this much. This is why I think it's worth this much. And it actually forces even more exchange of information. Because oftentimes when I realize that discrepancy comes not because people, want to be mean, or people who want to be overly ambitious. But the information I have is different from the information you have, right? In a 30-minute, 1 hour, even a 2-hour pitch, you can't give me enough information, as much information as you have. So oftentimes evaluation is just a reflection of the difference in information that both sides have. Now, how you sort of prevent what you described in the guidelines, then I'm not sure there's any, way to do it. I think your best bet, right? Your best bet is there are usually about 2 or 3 types of valuation, depending on what stage your business is. Your best bet, right, is to make sure you understand all those 3 types, right? Value your business based on all of those formulas, right? Have a very clearly thought through reason why it is A instead of B or C, and defend it. On the valuation argument, people are usually looking to understand the logic rather than to shoot you down, right? Because if I'm an investor and I say your business is worth 2 million and you tell me it's worth 5 million, and you can tell me why you think it's worth 5 million, I may actually be a lot more happier investing in the business, paying more money to invest in that business if I can agree with your logic, right? Investors don't necessarily always want to pay the least amount of money, right? They just want to understand where you're coming from. And if it makes sense, and you can show that the business they are investing in is potentially worth more than they thought, why not? So, see valuation at the beginning of a conversation, but go prepared, for an existing business, a mature business, there's, the discounted cash flow, there's 2 or 3 ways. Do your homework on those, and come up with a cogent argument. Yes, a discounted cash flow, yes, but there's only one of me in the world. So, premium of $5 million. Now, if that's your logic and you believe it, then go and say it. Right? There's once you get what comes out of the formula, there's a whole bunch of ups and downs, that you can add to it, and people do. Even those of us who use spreadsheets and whatever, we add, goodwill here, premium. You built a brand over a certain period of time. We understand that, here additional 200,000 in recognition of that, or we are going to help you with X, Y, Z. So whereas, another investor who will just give you money and won't see you will pay 5 million, we will pay 3 million because we're going to be with you. Every side comes in with what they believe they are worth, and it's a very nice tie suit-based form of a market, right? You're haggling in the market.
Interesting that you talk about that whole experience as a very nice thing, because oftentimes, it's almost as if you're going for a job interview, for if you have as an entrepreneur, wanting to talk to potential investors about your business, and even what you see, Shark Tank, Dragon's Den and all that, so you stand there in front of a panel and it's almost like they want to shoot you down. You know what I'm saying? So very, very typical of, that relationship. It's like, really begging you to come invest, but we know that investors also do need entrepreneurs to be able to maximize their investments and all that. So what is the real world like? What is it like?
Those things. I discovered Dragon's Den quite recently, and I watch it when I can, and it's a TV show. Right, so you have to bear that. It's a TV show, so I'm sure they pick people, and I'm sure they tell them to be a bit provocative, and because it's a TV show. Now, in the real world, right, investors will ask you difficult questions, right? But unless they're really mean people, mean-spirited, they don't ask you in a way that you feel they are trying to kill you. Nobody does that, as far as I can tell. They will ask you tough questions. Why do you believe you can do this? Why this number versus that? They will be tough. But, they won't say, I think you're smoking something, or that is TV stuff, right? So you have to separate the drama from the desire to understand what is in your business and why you are saying this versus that.
Okay, so just past class, we spoke about investment, and there was an investor here who said that they prefer businesses that had already started and you can prove that something is happening. How do you, as an investor, assess a business that has nothing, but perhaps in the future, not just looking at the figures, but looking at what type of business it is, that this business could work and I will get my investment back? It won't be easy, but how do you, as an investor, look at that as against a business that already perhaps can show you a certain amount of work it's done and the results that are coming out of it?
For me, when I look at a startup that has no history, we have looked at turnarounds, not strictly startups, but business that maybe existed, collapsed for one reason or another, but there's something there that we're trying to revive. So as Sagevest, we really haven't looked at any pure startups. We've looked at startups, but in partnership with very established international companies that we know for expertise. So that's a different story. But if we're talking pure startup, I'll give you my personal opinion. It's not my company opinion, because we don't do much of that yet. We hope to do it, we don't do much of that yet. Every startup, right, no matter how good, it actually goes back to what I said earlier. I would prefer if you gave me a fantastic idea and somebody would, a group of people who, I think the chance of executing are sort of 30-40%, versus a very average idea, right? There are 20 other people doing the same thing, but the chance of executing is 70-80%, right? I'll go for the average idea. So a lot of it boils down to the real and perceived capacity of the individual or the team behind to execute. Now, that doesn't answer your question, because they've never had an opportunity to execute the idea they're pitching. So, but what determines execution? From my humble opinion, drive is one of them. Drive, tenacity, resourcefulness, humility in the sense that not you're always walking around like this, but humility to ask for help, right? And a certain understanding of what the end product or the end goal is, and a drive to get there, right? Those are some of the key things I look for in being able to still make a very subjective call as to whether I think this product or this new business will see the light of day or not. But it's very subjective, which is why things like this, infrastructure like this, what ServLed is taking you through helps a lot. But I don't know if I answered your question, but that's sort of how I think about it. feel free to come back with more questions. If I didn't
I
answer.
think that you have, but it's just that you would prefer that the person would have started something, or would have had a certain track record. But what about if it's a track record, but not in the same thing the person is
That helps
pitching?
a lot. That helps a lot. You know, we are currently investing in a business now as a startup. One of the people, the business actually used to work in an NGO, but now come into a very commercial business. But when you disaggregate the skills and the tasks you believe that person needs to use or go through to make this business a success, you realize that the same skills they deployed elsewhere to succeed. So sometimes it's not about, oh, you're in a real estate industry, what does the real estate industry take? Okay, I'm hypothesizing, but an eye for detail, a lot of negotiating, whatever. If you're able to crystallize and say, this is what they did previously, these are the skills, or first you want to start with what they are trying to do, what kinds of skills will be required, right? You know, if they come and they say, okay, I want to go sell ice cream, right? I'm going to build a retail network. Well, you know, what is retail? Retail is detail, right? So you need somebody who understands detail, right? You need somebody who understands how a cold storage network works, right? You need somebody who understands how to create a brand, right? Now, they may have come from an industry, you know, somewhere where they've exhibited those skills, but it may be called something else. And even they may not realize, you know, so that helps. If you've if you've been successful or you've demonstrated something, even in another industry, another environment, and we can try and crystallize what helped you succeed there. And determine those skills are transferable. Helps.
One question I have, you know, and I think, let me use this analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime back, you know how, let's call it, you know, you wanted a visa,
Mm-hmm.
and then these consulates, you know, have a typical idea of who they would want to give a visa to. So maybe you're young, you're just out of school, no economic ties, no social ties, and they think, look, this guy, he's not going to come back. Now, in the mind of an investor, who is that typical investor that, you know, entrepreneur that they look? Because I'm listening to everything that you're saying, and I'm thinking that, you know, mostly an entrepreneur is not also that technical person.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably that person who has birthed the idea and he's saying, look, I can get together a team who can execute this.
Yeah.
At the time of pitching their business to you, he probably knows little or nothing about all the technical details. What are you using, you know, in the case of what Angela was asking, you know, to even assess that, look, this idea will be able to go to the light of day?
Sorry, my question is linked to what he's asking. In your experience, what has been the absolute no-no when it comes to investing?
Okay. What has been the absolute no-no?
Or maybe the top reasons why you would turn from an investment?
Reason number one, or one of the big reasons, is sometimes you feel that okay, let's move on. And then let me give you a range of reasons. Right. One, sometimes we just don't understand the business or the space. And if you come from our value proposition is we will just not providers of capital. There are other people who do that much better than us, who have a lot more money than us, who are just writing checks. So we have to, premise of ours is that we have to understand or be able to develop an understanding of the space in which you operate so that we can help you and work with you. And we also derive satisfaction from feeling like beyond just providing capital, we've been involved in the business. So sometimes we turn stuff down, not because of anything about the business or the entrepreneur, it's just that we don't think we understand it. There was an example we were talking about earlier. We don't think we understand the space enough. We've had a few situations where the story of the entrepreneur is not very clear. The story is not clear in the sense that it changes, right? It's a very important, your story has to be consistent. And the moment an investor senses that the story is changing, not because you are deliberately changing it, you're changing without reason, right? Everybody updates forecasts and whatever, fine. But if the story keeps bouncing around without reason, then we find it hard to determine whether we can read you properly. And by extension, whether when we invest, we can read the business properly. It's very important for us. Transparency is important. Sometimes we've had a couple of situations where we thought, this is not transparent enough for us. Not because the person is a bad person or whatever, but somehow they are not communicating properly, we are not thinking properly, and this, we don't say no at the first sign of this. We get to know people for a while, and if we think there's a pattern, then we think that the inability to see through the business will be a problem. So that's one. The third thing is sometimes we just get the idea that people just want to build lifestyle businesses, right? By lifestyle business, people want to get to a certain level and coasts, right? I want to be able to afford their nice house and their nice car, and that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do, great. That is not the business we are about. We want to spend our time working with people who believe that they can build businesses that can become a big business. Maybe an idea today, right? But we want to work with people who believe, and this is just us. Other investors might have different opinions. So we like people who can aspire for big things while starting small. And that's us. So if we get the sense, I've got a nice contract in the back of which I'm going to build a business, and every year I get a contract for $2 million, and it's enough to make a profitable business, and every year it's $2 million. Great, go for it, but that's not us. Right? Some people like that. And then maybe there's a whole set of, I wouldn't say no-nos, but issues around people seeing an equity investor as a bank. Right? It's a very important set of issues. And it goes back to what I started with about the marriage versus the dating scenario. Sometimes we get people coming to us and say, oh, give me your money, I'll guarantee you 20% interest, and in 5 years you're gone. I say, well, go to the bank, that's what they're there for, right? And sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you spot that up front. Sometimes you don't spot it up front until you get to a point and you start talking, okay, so we're going to have 2 people on the board, and we're going to, what do you want to sit on our board for? I don't even have board meetings. You know, I don't have board meetings. You know, the last time I got money from a bank, they didn't assist to my board meeting. So, you know, and this happens in environments like Ghana, where we've been so used to banks and no equity investors. So any money we get, we think is people are thinking like a bank. We don't think like a bank, right? And if we try and correct that and it's not happening, we know it's going to present problems down the line. So those are some of the things. There isn't one thing that I say this happens, you know, more often than not. It's a whole variety of things because people come from different backgrounds. Your question, sorry, your question was.
Well, actually, very much related to what you
Okay.
mentioned.
So have I've
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, just talking about sitting on boards.
Yes.
Do you get so deep with all the investments you make?
Well, no, you can't get deep in all of them. I mean, our and this varies again by private equity investor, but our approach is to make few investments and get involved in them. And by involved, I don't mean, you know, we sit there and we have an office and every day we show up and, you know. It means that, you know, if companies will make investments and have a strategy session and they think we can contribute something, you know, we're happy to spend a day, 2 days, go sit with them, you know, beyond board meetings. If there's a specific challenge, we're happy to lend support, go spend a half a day with the CEO, think through a problem, you know, that kind of, not, you know, once a quarter come for 2 hours, drink a nice cup of tea and sort of, you know, pass a resolution and go home. That's not what we like to do. There's a place for that, by the way. You know, it's a good function. It's required. You need people to provide checks and balances, provide guidance. But what we like to do and what we think this market needs is a bit more of interactive engagement, working with entrepreneurs, different types of companies. So in some companies, there's one that we're working on right now where we're actually discussing where we take over a department, right? Because the entrepreneur has said, you know, frankly, this whole finance area, you know, you guys understanding me, I just want to do this and that and that. So we're going to run the finance from our office, right? We'll run purchases from our office because the company we'll run logistics from our office because most of the company's logistics is at Tema because they export and the company is out of Accra. So it varies situation by situation. We may agree to be more involved in a function or help with more general, you know, management support, or sometimes it's time-based. You know, the company is planning to build a new factory, then can we spend the next 6 months helping them with fundraising for this? You know, that's the kind of, and there's no science to it, it sort of flows.
I'll ask one point if anyone has additional questions. Since our time we're running out, but it's good you address the issue of exits. And I know from talking to some of the guys in here, it's a concern that every people are shy of. For private equity firms, I mean, most of them come with clear obviously, they all come with intentions to exit at some point, but some of them are very transparent when it comes to explaining how they need to exit. And in some cases, it's not too clear, especially when you have a very young entrepreneur who doesn't understand the intricacies and complexities of, okay, if this happens, then this multiple of this and that, right? So it creates a bit of discomfort at times. Question is, what can a young entrepreneur do to prepare himself and myself to clearly understand what kind of exit is favorable for them? First, what is it? Obviously, we besides getting oil, but how do you know? Because there are certain instances where it's just not clear. I've been in certain situations where you've read it, you get there and you're like, I don't understand this. What should I do?
Okay. The first thing to say is that, if it makes you feel any better, is that sometimes the people who are proposing don't understand it themselves. The issue of exit is a difficult one in an environment like Ghana, because in the more developed private equity markets, the way private equity is a very broad umbrella. Private equity simply means you are buying equity privately, right? so it covers venture capital, it covers a private equity fund, it covers investment holding company. But let me talk about the funds, because that is probably the more the best known form of private equity investing. When someone says I have a private equity fund, right? It's a technical term, right? It just doesn't mean that I have funds. Because some people don't understand. Some people think, oh, you have funds. A fund in the financial sector, a fund is a technical term that describes a certain type of company that goes and raises money from what we call limited partners. So primarily from institutes like insurance companies, much bigger institutions, what they call fund of funds, right? Much bigger companies who give money to funds who then invest. So fund of funds, and they give a private equity fund manager, right, a pot of money. Usually it's more than one limited partner, so you have maybe 5 people contributing, let's say $100 million. That fund manager then has the mandate to go and spend that $100 million buying a certain type of company in a certain type of predefined. Sometimes it's general, sometimes it's industry specific, sometimes it's specified by size of investment, sometimes there are all kinds of different models, but they have a certain mandate. Every year, the way they pay their salaries, they make a management fee, right, on the amount of funds they manage, right? But they have a mandate to then come and find companies who fit the definition of what their fund is supposed to do, invest in them, and return the money to the guys who gave them the money in 8 to 10 years, usually. 8 to 10 years, they have to return the money. So what that means is that by the 5th year, they have to start thinking about getting their cash back, right? Because it takes a while. So by the 5th year, every private equity investor is starting to think about, okay, now how do I get my cash out of this? Because by 8th year, I have to get the money back. And that is what affects you guys. That's why they come and they say, it's 5 years, right? And by 5 years, either you buy me out, or I go and list, or that. They will try and find any kind of way to get their money back after 5 years. Okay. Now, in the more advanced markets, it's fairly easy. You've got stock markets, several stock exchanges, you've got several companies who will buy company, you've got what they'll do industry trades, industry deals. So the exit is relatively easy. If you invest in a company in 5 years, you want to get out, use your network, find somebody else who wants to. You get out and they are in and you're gone. Around here, it doesn't work that way. So the exit is a very tricky subject, right? That's why at least the local fund managers here try to come up with all kinds of mechanisms. They are not trying to pull a fast one over you, but they are also trying to get their money back so they can give it back. And in the absence of a guaranteed liquid stock market that they can say, guaranteed by 5 years we have to go and list, or by 5 years we have to find somebody who will buy us out, because they can't guarantee the. They try and find a way where somehow, either you can pay them or they can. I don't know those mechanisms, but that is what is the confusing part, right? It's not because they hate you or they're trying to confuse you. It's because they have to get out and they don't know how to get out. That's really the simple thing of it. Now, then you have others like us who don't have a fund, right? We don't have a fund. Our model is we identify and work with investors who want to invest for the longer term. And we try and get them to invest through our holding company. So, and there are various, I don't want to get technical, but there are various ways you can. So because we believe that around here, by the time you do the if you find a transaction today, by the time you do the transaction, it's 2 years. If you're lucky sometimes, right? Not to sort of scare you, but it can take a while. It can take 6 months, it can take 3, but sometimes they take a while, right? By the time you start getting to know the company after you've done the transaction, it's another 2 years. Then you have to already start thinking about 7. It doesn't, to us, it doesn't make sense. So we tried to change the model, and so the innovation we thought we're bringing to the market is to have access to long-term capital, that we can invest in a few, not too many, a few companies that we believe can become major companies in the future. Take our bets, work with them. If our money has to be in there for 20 years, right? We don't want to disrupt the business by trying to take our money out. We would do a transaction at our level, right? So if somebody wants money out, maybe we'll sell shares in Sagevest Holdings to somebody and bring somebody in. But we manage it such that our underlying companies continue to grow without feeling like every few years they need to find somebody, sell somebody out and buy somebody in and all of that. So that's what we are trying to do. Now, it's not easy either, right? But that is one form of private equity. So when we get into a conversation, we don't talk about 5 years and we don't talk about that. Now we are raising a fund which may be dedicated more towards startups and early stage. We're still in discussions. That may have some times associated, but that's because it's a fund along the first structure that I told you. So that hopefully gives you a very broad perspective, all to say I don't have an answer to your question.
I think we'll end it here. We'll show our appreciation to we're very thankful for the insights that you have shared with us. I think for those of us here who are entrepreneurs, there's never been a better time to be able to start a business. At a time when all you have to do is to dream and have an idea that can not just take care of your own lifestyle, but take care of hundreds of people like you. So we have to think and dream big, because the truth is that the economies in the West have crashed, and everybody is trying to look. Africa is the continent where you can put in 1,000 and probably go away with 100,000. Even better when it comes to technology companies and all that. And it's all entrepreneurs who are able to start these businesses for people to be able to invest in. And at ServLed, what we are trying to do is, one of the things that Mr. Kwakwa talked about was how entrepreneurs just the nature our nature is that we're able to start something, but we don't put structure to it, and that's why we are not able to attract these funds. So if you have a great idea, we take you through. Currently, we have a 6-week business class that we just take you through to help you to be able to put structure, to your business, where you can attract, and the whole idea is to be able to attract funds from these investors. Yes, some of them are not doing early stage, but we are doing early stage. We have an angel investor network, high network individuals who want to see businesses from Africa grow. Because I'm sure if you're here and you're African, you're Ghanaian, one of the things that you're thinking of is that you hear of so many companies, in the West that have spanned generations, hundreds of years. But in Ghana, in Africa, you don't see that. We want to be able to change that story, and we believe that our generation and the generation behind us, we have the best opportunity to be able to do this because, again, like we said, funds are available. So let's, talk to any of us, who are distinguished in these shirts, and of course, some is here as well, speak to us and let's see how we can work together. You as an entrepreneur, we who have the networks of, the likes of Mr. Kwakwa, Sagevest, who also have long-term money, patient money. That's what we call it. It's patient money, They're not going to knock on your doors after 5 years and say, we are here, we want our money back. And let's grow African businesses together. Currently, we say that, look, over 80,000 people come out of schools every year who do not find jobs. If we were building super big companies, I believe we'll be able to attract some of our youth who will not end up in the arms of Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab who will come and hit us. So,
they're coming in.
they are coming. They are coming, because I think they see that there's an army of youth who don't know what to do with their lives. I think entrepreneurship, creates a very, very good win-win situation for all of us, especially in times like this. So at this stage, please help me and join me say a very big thank you once again to Mr. Kwakwa. I believe that anytime we call on you again, you'll be here to just help our entrepreneurs to be able to access the funds that you have.
I thought I was going to dodge that.
We have questions. How do we
Yes.
channel them?
Yes.
But you have my email.
Yes.
I don't mind coming back at some point, but you have my email, so I'm happy for you to share it if people want to sort of get in touch directly.
One other thing that I forgot to talk to you about, one of the things that we do is we also, of course, to be able to have access to investors, what you do is typically you pitch your business idea, right? This coming Wednesday, we have one pitch session. If you are interested and you have a great idea that you want to pitch, please speak to us and let's see how we can, get you access to a panel of investors that you can pitch your ideas. Who knows? Someone might. Last Wednesday we had Jerry from, Injaro. They are also a private equity fund manager, and they said, look, it's easy for them to give you $2 million than to give you 20,000 or 200,000. And he was just also talking about the frustration. Sometimes our dreams are so small, our ideas are so small. And Mr. Kwakwa talked about it. Those who manage funds, they are paid a percentage of how much they are managing. So assuming you are getting 4% of and that's probably even on the high side. 4% of management fees of the amount of money that you are seeking to invest here. So let's say it's 100 million. That means that you get 4% of it, which is about what? 400,000. But if you come to me and you ask for just 10,000, and the management fee on that is what? 400 Ghana cedis. So and it's the same amount of work that the investment firm would need to do, and so it's not exciting. So let's have some big dreams, like we said. Draw. You're taking some risk, but it's not all your money. The investors are also taking a lot of risk. So I believe that together we'll be able to build some super great companies. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll end with a closing prayer, and then we have dinner served. Let's all go and then network and then talk about what we can do together. Thank you. Joseph, if you can end us on.